And that was something that just kind of was born from my love of solo traveling, my love of solo hiking,
Right.
my love of, no one's going to tell me what I can and can't do. I'm going to do it. And it doesn't make it my fault if someone decides to, try to take advantage of me or they try to hurt me. That's on them. But I'm going to learn skills to where if I need to protect myself, I have the ability to do so that I have an option, I have a choice, and I have that confidence so that I don't have to walk through the world in fear. I don't have to avoid doing certain activities because I'm afraid.
You are listening to the No Gimmicks, Just Sweat podcast with your host, Eric Logan. No Gimmicks, Just Sweat is dedicated to hearing the journeys and unique stories behind an athlete's training and what drives them. Get inspired to own your life and make the impossible possible. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Also, please take a few seconds to rate the show and drop me a review. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello and welcome to this episode of No Gimmicks, Just Sweat. And today we welcome Nicole Snell onto the show. Nicole, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great, Eric. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being a guest. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm excited.
All right, let's get to rolling. So, as with every episode of the show, we start with icebreaker questions just to kind of get warm up and get things flowing, as well as letting the listeners kind of get an idea of who you are and the person we'll be talking to today. All right, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
All right. Morning training or evening training?
Morning training.
Coffee or tea?
Neither.
Really?
Yeah, I don't drink either.
Okay, interesting. That's a new answer. I've never had neither one. Okay. Cardio training or strength training?
Strength training.
Your favorite piece of gym equipment?
Squat rack.
Favorite outdoor activity?
Horseback riding.
Okay, good. That's a new one. That's a new one. Horseback riding. Okay. All right. Favorite exercise or form of cross training?
Oh, my favorite exercise. Oh, gosh. You had to throw me a curveball, didn't you, Eric?
Of course. Of course.
I would have to say, okay, so my favorite exercise, I actually like pull-ups.
Okay.
I would have to say pull-ups.
Okay. What's your least favorite exercise?
Ooh, least favorite would be planks. Just got to say it. Planks. I do them, but I don't like them.
All right. First thing you do after your workout?
Drink some water. Drink lots of water.
Favorite song to work out to?
Oh, I don't know if I can say it here.
Okay.
Well, maybe I can. I mean, everyone's adult here, but no, wait, hold on. I'll change it. Let's see. What is my favorite workout song? It's so hard because sometimes, when there's new cool trending ones that come up, you're like, oh yeah, that's the one. But I really like hip hop, and I like trance and like electronic music, like EDM, because I feel like the beats really get you going. So Can I just say a genre instead of a song?
That's fine. But now I'm curious, okay, what song is she See, now you spurred my curiosity now. I guess we could talk about that offline.
Yeah. Let's
I'm
talk
curious
about that
now
offline.
All right. Do you have a dream race or some type of event that you would want to participate in?
A dream race or event? I want to climb Kilimanjaro.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So I just did Whitney last year, and yeah, I would love to do Kilimanjaro.
Okay. All right, last one. If you can go and train could be run, hike, anything with any celebrity or athlete, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
The Rock. Hands down, The Rock. I want to go through a strength training workout with The Rock. I'm not obviously going to be able to push around the same amount of weight as he can, but I want to see his training program. I want him to motivate me because he just seems like the ultimate big brother. like, all right, come on. I just feel like he'd be super motivating and would like help push me and like teach me some new things.
Okay. Now I got to pick on you a little bit because everybody generally tries to either say The Rock or Schwarzenegger. So
no, really?
you pick...
I thought that was unique. Darn it. Can I redo my answer?
but you gave a good answer. You gave a good answer and reason why.
Okay.
All right. So Nicole, let's find out more about you. As I tell everyone that kind of comes to the show, think of yourself as you're the newest superhero on the block. And they're making a movie about you, and this is your origin story. You know, how did you get from where you started to where you are today?
Well, Eric, it all started this one time when I was hiking in the desert as a kid, and I fell into a volcano, and I came out with superpowers. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I love it. I love it.
But in all seriousness, though, I did grow up in the desert. My dad is a retired Marine, and so I was born on the Navy base at the Marine Corps installation in 29 Palms, California. And so I grew up out there and graduated high school out there. And so I really had the desert as my playground. And I really just loved being outside. For me, being outside was safer than being inside. And so having that solitude and that freedom to just kind of go out and explore was always something that was very meaningful to me. So I loved getting out and collecting rocks and playing with lizards and catching lizards and spotting different desert animals and plants and things out there. And I just really had this love of adventure, even though I wasn't able to realize that until I became an adult. But I would consume books. I would look through encyclopedias and look at, books and read and, get lost in the stories of people that were traveling around the world and doing all of these really unique adventures and activities. And, growing up as a Black woman, there were not a lot of people on TV or anywhere that looked like me that were doing the types of things that I wanted to do. So I didn't have a lot of role models as far as someone to look up to do those things, but that didn't stop me because I've just always had this stubborn streak. I guess I was just kind of born with it. That's my superpower that I was born with, is being stubborn and deciding that I'm going to do things regardless if anyone was going to be supportive, regardless if anyone else was going to do it. I had no problem like going off and doing things alone. Like I didn't feel like I had to have somebody with me in order to do an activity or try something. And I know that's not the same for everybody, but that's just kind of that's my story, right? Like that's the thing that allows me to go and do the solo things that I do now. That started very young of, me just feeling comfortable like playing, with toys in my room, without having to have, a play date or anything, just keeping myself occupied and, going outside and playing in the desert. So when I got to college, I decided that I wanted to start doing more adventurous activities and seeing more of LA because I grew up in 29 Palms, and then I got a full scholarship to go to Cal State Long Beach because I graduated as valedictorian from my high school class. So I got a full 4-year academic president scholarship to Cal State Long Beach. And so I was now in LA and, started doing more hiking, and I was in Long Beach. So I would go and, walk and rollerblade down on the boardwalk by the beach. And I wanted to be an actor at this point, right? That was the dream that I had out of high school and into college. So my major in college was speech communication because I figured I could use that degree regardless of if I got into acting or I did something else, because I always loved to speak and to talk and to perform. I did plays in elementary school. I was senior class president. Like I was involved in student government. So I was always like advocating and talking. And here's something that I don't normally tell people, but we're talking about my superhero origin story. So I can throw this in there. I won the Miss 29 Palms pageant of my town when I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
And part of that, it was a scholarship pageant. So some of that, gave me some money for when I went to college. But then what ended up happening is I remember when I won the title, I knew I didn't just want it to be a title. And I remember talking to the pageant organizers and saying, like, no, I want to do more. Like, I want to involve the whole court, the first and second runner up. I want to go and I want to like read to preschool kids. I want to read to kindergarten kids. I want to, go and be a part of community events. Like, so I was trying to do more and be more community oriented and community activating. And that was one of the first times that they had somebody who that was what they wanted to do, that it wasn't something that someone else had the idea, that was like, no, I want to do this. I want to be more involved. So I was really involved with that. And so I took that with me when I went to college and things. Is I just always had this drive of wanting to help people and not really knowing exactly how that would play out. But, hey, entertaining people is helping people. And I was into sports in high school. I was on the track team. I got my 4-year letter on track, and I played volleyball for 3 years and was co-captain my senior year until I broke my ankle and couldn't complete the season. And so when track season came around, my ankle still wasn't completely better for me to sprint. So I turned into a shot put and discus thrower. Can you believe that?
Okay.
And I was pretty good. I was pretty good for like that being the first, year I'd ever done it. So I had done, some martial arts when I was in high school. When I got to college, I, took some martial arts in school. I did some dance classes. I played intramural volleyball. I, would go and go on runs around campus. So I was very athletic and, decided that I wanted to, to do more with acting and stuff as well. So I got an agent, did, some acting. And then when you're an actor, you have to kind of drop your day at the drop of a hat when you have an audition. But I was in school on a scholarship. And so I started missing class, and a lot of classes you only got credit if you attended.
Right.
So I had to decide, well, do I want to potentially risk my scholarship, or do I want to put acting on hold until I graduate? So I decided to put it on hold until I graduated so that I could, keep my grades up and, do that. And what ended up happening my senior year was I got a internship. Like one of the courses there offered internship credit to go and work in TV production, different aspects of TV production. And I thought, that'll be great. I will be a much better actor if I know how everything works behind the scenes. Like if I have an understanding of what everyone's job is. And I think that's something that is true with me, kind of. It's a recurring thread in my life is I like to understand the why. I like to understand how all the parts fit together. I like to understand things and problem solve around it, because I feel like if I have a better understanding of the problem and all the different pieces involved, then I can be better able to help. And so I was like, oh, if I understand how all the pieces fit together, then I'll be, I'll be well on my way. I'll have a better grasp of things. And so I interned at a casting office, a marketing office, and then my senior year, or the last, I think I started my junior year, I guess. Sorry, this is trying to remember all the little details. But my senior year, I started working at a production studio where it was, they had programming that was there. The only day of the week I was available to intern, they actually had a live production that came in and was filming. So I got to actually practice and learn on set from a real show. And I just fell in love with that because I'm very hands-on. I am very tech savvy. When I got to college, for instance, my first job in college was building computers at a computer company. Yep. And I had never done that before. But yeah, I got this job and they taught me how to build PCs from scratch. And I was doing that. I was crimping Ethernet cable my first day, all of that. And then I started working at a computer store, a retail store, as a cashier. And then I moved to the sales floor because I was really good at selling. And I was really good at like explaining things to people who weren't necessarily computer savvy, and, all those things, and helping people troubleshoot things like that. So I was always really into the parts and my hands-on and like STEM stuff, And so being on that stage, that production stage, and, being able to go into the control room and, go into the tape room and asking the cameraman, like, how does this work? And talking to the, the audio team, and talking to the lighting, and where are you plugging in, and why does this work? And just all the whys. It was just great. And so I realized that I liked that better than the acting process of, getting an agent and, going on auditions and, really your ability to to get jobs when you're an actor is not ultimately up to you, right? Like you learn and you practice and you rehearse and you go to classes and training and you go on the auditions, but it's really ultimately up to, you know, the casting director, whether they're going to cast you in something, right?
Right.
And that can be arbitrary, you know, it can be based on, you know, looks, height, hair color, you know, someone else's interpretation of the character, things like that. Whereas when I was doing this work behind the scenes as a production assistant, how you started, it was based on my skill, my networking, my, you know, my ability to do the job. And so I thought, you know what, I want to do this. Like, I'm going to go in this direction. I'm going to be behind the scenes in TV production. And eventually I am going to like produce my own show and I'm going to put myself in front of the camera, which actually now I'm doing.
Okay.
So it's so funny how it all came around. But I was like, you know, I really like this. I really like that it's based on my skill and my ability to perform the job function, and I'll get promoted if I, you know, show that I'm able to do the tasks that need me to be done. So I started as a production assistant, and then after I graduated college, I started working at the production studio that I had interned at, and I became a studio coordinator. And then I just kind of worked my way up through the system and ended up at a company that did all of the, it was called Speed Channel Test Drive, and it was a motorsports show that was hosted by Tommy Kendall, who's a professional driver. And we would take production cars that, you know, are going to be available to the public, like new cars, and we would take them on road courses around the world and cities around the world, and he would test drive them and then give his, you know, his opinion. We have guest drivers. So that was really cool. So I got to travel around the world producing TV shows for this company. And we also did a show where we did commercial clip shows, so like Super Bowl's greatest commercials or world's funniest commercials.
Oh, okay.
And travel.
Okay.
Yeah, it was super fun, you know, great team, great crew of people. And so I had a 12-year career in TV production and worked my way up to the to a position, the director of digital production for original digital content at a company called Endemol. And so that was great. You know, I had an office, I had, you know, an expense account. I was, you know, an executive at this production company, and, you know, all the things that I was like, okay, this is the direction my career is supposed to go in, you know, and then from here you move up to the next level and you move up to the next level. And that's just kind of the trajectory that you feel like you're going to be on. But around all this time, I've been wondering like what I could do more for women, like what I could do more for women. What could I do more for Black women?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that sexual assault is such a huge epidemic in our world. And I had been, you know, donating to organizations and signing petitions and, you know, trying to be as socially active as I could, but I just felt like I wanted to do more, but I didn't know what that more was. You know, I just thought, okay, I have to find more organizations to support, or where can I go and volunteer? You know, what is the path? And then what ended up happening is I got contacted by a group I was involved with when I was in college that did domestic violence prevention workshops. And they had been contacted by the Department of Navy, and the Navy wanted them to travel around to military, Navy and Marine installations around the world delivering this training. And so they wanted me to be involved as a facilitator. And I said, oh my gosh, that'd be great. I would love to. But, you know, I have a full-time job. I don't know that I can be much help, but I'll do what I can. And what ended up happening is the company I was working for laid off our entire department.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because they were, you know, there was a merger happening, and there's just a lot of things behind the scenes. You know, it wasn't personal, it was business.
Right.
And we were able to finish the last project we were working on, which was really cool. It was called Azeroth Choppers, and it was a docu-reality series where Paul Jr., the guy from American Choppers,
Okay.
was building specialty bikes for the World of Warcraft game.
Oh,
And so he had one team, one group was building a bike for the Horde, and one team was building a bike for the Alliance. And so and then we were going to have a live show where the viewers and the fans got to vote on which one gets made into a bike for the game. So that was a really cool, fun show to work on. And so we finished that, and then the military contract started. And so I started working with that company, and through that company, I met Girls Fight Back.
okay.
because what happened is that the company was a, it was a college group, and so they needed help navigating the military contract stuff, and so they hired an agency, and the agency happened to be the owner of Girls Fight Back. And I remember going to their website and seeing Girls Fight Back and then reading up about what they did and saw, oh my gosh, they're teaching self-defense to women in college.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how in the world do I get involved? What do I need to do? How do I make this a thing where I can be involved? And so I sent the owner an email, and they did not have any openings for a speaker available, but in 3 months they did. And in 3 months, I started my speaker training, and it included taking a 20-hour full contact self-defense class through a company called Impact Personal Safety. And after I took that class, I knew I wanted to teach for them too. And so I was doing 3 things simultaneously. I was, traveling around the world and facilitating discussions for the United States Navy and Marine Corps. I was teaching Girls Fight Back presentations at colleges, and we didn't just teach women, like we did gender inclusive presentations too, so that because everybody can benefit from these skills. So we're doing that, and then I was becoming a lead instructor with Impact. I started as an assistant and started moving my way up. So I was kind of doing all these things at once. Not really sure how everything was going to play out, because obviously this was not as lucrative as being in the TV production, right? TV production pays very well.
Right.
So I'm doing something that I love, but I'm also thinking, okay, how am I going to make ends meet? I guess I'll try this out for a year. And this is 2014. I'll try this out for a year and I'll see what happens. And now here I am in 2020. I've been doing it since then. And what ended up happening is in 2019, I decided I wanted to do a lot more work with Girls Fight Back and do more from the empowerment-based self-defense side of things. And so I really just started working on that with the owner at the time. And we had already started developing new programs for corporations and things like that. And at the end of 2019, the owner decided she wanted to sell the company. And so I remember I was just sitting there one weekend because she told me, and I was like, okay, yeah, I knew who she was selling it to. It was the person that was already working with her. He's great. And I knew he was going to do great things with the company and the agency. But I had a thought, Eric. It was just like a fleeting thought on a Sunday evening. I wonder if she would sell the company to me.
Okay.
Because I had been a speaker since 2014.
Mm-hmm.
I had been, traveling. I had been putting my heart and my soul into this. I believed in this so much. And at the time we had 3 speakers, all of us traveling around, but then I became the one who was the most active because the others had like scheduling conflicts and things. They were wonderful. They just weren't able to put in as much time as I was. And plus I was local to LA and they weren't. And so I was doing a lot with the company, and I just felt like, wow, I believe in this so much. I really feel like I would be the best person to carry it forward. And so I emailed the boss at the time, she's a friend. And I just asked, hey, do you think would you consider selling this to me?
Right.
And Monday morning, 8 a.m., I get an email back, and she goes, yeah, I think you would be great. I just didn't know that this is what you wanted. I didn't think this is what you wanted. So I said, yes, I do want this. I do want this. I don't know what that means. I don't know what the process is from here. So what do we do? What do we do now?
Right.
And so I had to make a decision within a week. And now we're in early 2020. And what happened in 2020?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. So had no idea that was coming. Yeah. And so I had to let her know within a week because, there's a lot of business paperwork that was already like in the works that needed to now be revised and new paperwork. And, I had to find a business attorney, which I'd never had to do that before. All these things that were completely new to me. I never wanted to be a business owner. I was always happy to be a great number 2. Like I will be like the right-hand person of somebody because then I don't have to take the responsibility of the stress and all the things because I saw that. I worked with the company that I was working with in production, that it was a very small company, and I saw the stress that the owner would go through, and I'm like, oh man, I never want that. Like I want to know my salary's coming, like my weekly paycheck is coming, and I'll do a great job, but I don't have to carry the weight of the business ownership. But now here I am, carrying the weight of the business ownership, but it's because I believe so much in what we were doing. We handled all the paperwork, signed everything, and then the whole world shut down. And I had to figure out how to bring live programming
to
the virtual space, because all we'd ever done was live programming. That's what you do. I travel to a college, I travel to a company, I do a presentation for, their audience.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in interactive, and we're all like, in this, and now I have to figure out how to bring it online. And also now I own this company. Granted, the company has been around since 2001. So Girls Fight Back was founded in 2001 by a woman named Erin Weed, and it was in honor of her friend Shannon McNamara. And Shannon was murdered in her off-campus apartment outside of Eastern Illinois University. And because of how hard Shannon fought, there was enough DNA and physical evidence collected that they were able to capture and prosecute her murderer.
Mm-hmm.
And so Erin wanted to start a program, a company that honored Shannon's life, honored her ferocity and her warrior spirit, kept her memory alive, and also to empower the women in the community that were scared and felt uncertain for their safety after this horrific attack, and to help them feel like that we don't have to live in fear, that even though we're women and society tells women, all of these things that are not true about, oh, you're weak, or you're helpless, or oh, you can't defend yourself against a man, or maybe you should just not go out, or all these different lies that are told that really just restrict us and try to keep us small. She wanted to give women something that helped them feel powerful. And that's how Girls Fight Back started. And then I, got involved in 2014. I bought it in 2020. And now I've, expanded what we believe in and my mission. And it's to help people live their life limitlessly. And that was something that just kind of was born from my love of solo traveling, my love of solo hiking,
Right.
my love of, no one's going to tell me what I can and can't do. I'm going to do it. And it doesn't make it my fault if someone decides to, try to take advantage of me, or they try to hurt me. That's on them. But I'm going to learn skills to where if I need to protect myself, I have the ability to do so that I have an option, I have a choice, and I have that confidence so that I don't have to walk through the world in fear. I don't have to avoid doing certain activities because I'm afraid. Instead, I can say, okay, I have the skills to be able to recognize danger, respond to danger. And if I can get away, I can get away. But if not, that person is going to be very sorry, because I am fully prepared to protect myself and I know I'm worth fighting for. And so I've brought that to colleges. That was our main audience when we started, but now I speak to all types of groups. I work with the military now with my company. I work with production companies. I work with healthcare industry, nursing staff. I work with, sales teams, realtors. I work with Fortune 500 companies, tech companies, construction companies, outdoor groups, retreats, running retreats, women's empowerment clinics, conferences, solo travelers. Like, just, it's endless, because all of these different groups of people want to feel safe and empowered going about and living their life, personal life or work life. And I teach not just physical self-defense skills, but I teach verbal skills, non-physical skills, boundary setting, communication skills, things that we can use in all aspects of our life to live empowered.
See, an origin story. See, superhero. I told you. and that is more exciting than falling into the volcano and getting
really. I mean, I think the volcano is kind of cool.
Well, yeah, okay, if you like that kind of stuff. All right, so I kind of want to dive into that a little bit more, but also kind of look at it from the hiking perspective, because I noticed you do a lot of hiking online.
Yes.
And hiking and walking through the woods, let's keep it real, that's something that Black people don't normally do.
That is very true.
There's a stigma to that, especially
yes.
If you live in rural areas or the deep South like I do.
Yes.
So how do you encourage people to get out and hike? I tell a lot of people that, whenever I tell them I'm going on a trail run or something, they kind of give me a look, and I said, it's good. I get fresh air, because you're not around cars, you're getting that natural fresh air. I was like, unless I'm going somewhere that is totally remote, I was like, I doubt me, knock on wood, before some of that, I'm not going to run into a bear or a mountain lion or anything, or a coyote, but it's
Right.
that there is that stigma of being Black and running through the woods. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I turned to history and I acknowledged like our history, and it was illegal for us for many, many years, hundreds of years, to access outdoor spaces on our own terms.
Yes.
Right. But before that, I just recently found out, and I mean, it's awful that it took me this many years to actually find this out, but Harriet Tubman was such a prolific outdoors woman.
Yes.
Like, she was working in like timber mills, and she knew how to do bird calls. She was an herbalist.
Yes.
She knew how to navigate by the stars. She was an outdoors woman. She was out leading enslaved people to their freedom through, in the outdoors at night, through a network that she created with, the people that she knew that were safe places to start. But she knew how to navigate through the woods in the outdoors. So,
and yes, we're back after some technical difficulties, and it's technology, and you just roll with it.
You just roll with it.
All right. So before we got cut off, we were talking about, Blacks and enjoying and, hiking and enjoying outdoors and stuff. And you were kind of going into the history, Harriet Tubman, and how she was very knowledgeable about navigating outdoors, especially during that time when, we as the people weren't allowed to do so.
Right. Yeah. And I just recently found out about Harriet Tubman, like, in this way. And I just feel like I wish I would have known this earlier. So now that I know, I'm trying to spread the word and spread the knowledge about what a prolific outdoors woman she is. She was an herbalist. She worked in the timber mill. She knew bird calls. She used them as she was leading enslaved people to their freedom. She, knew how to navigate by the stars. Like, she was an outdoors woman. And so there was a speaker at a conference I was at a couple of weeks ago, and his name's Alex Bailey, and he runs an organization called Black Outside in Texas. And he talked about whose stories are being told, and how a big part of us reclaiming our power and our history in the outdoors is by hearing the stories of our ancestors who were in the outdoors, because we don't necessarily hear that. We don't hear about Harriet Tubman often in the terms of how prolific she was in the outdoors. There's so many stories of Black people that have been so successful in the outdoors, and, challenged it, and, did these really amazing adventures and journeys, but we rarely hear about them. So if we're not hearing about these success stories, we're not hearing about these ancestors of ours that we can look up to as heroes to us, as an example of, oh, hey, they did this in the outdoors, so can we? Then it's very hard for us to connect to the outdoors in that way. If the only history we're hearing and the only thing we know is the years and years when we were not allowed to go into the outdoors, even after enslavement ended and Jim Crow is in effect, we were still not allowed to go into the outdoors. There were still many restrictions on national parks, swimming pools, places we could travel freely, sundown towns. There was a lot of restrictions on our movement. And because of that, for safety reasons, a lot of Black people did not do those things, because they could have been met with violence, death, abuse, arrest if they did. And so that is kind of what prevented us from actualizing our outdoors history, is because of that part of our history. But I think, and when we connect with more of it, when we learn how much that our ancestors were in the outdoors, not just here in America, but also, our history in Africa, that how connected we were to nature. And we all know there's so much science behind how being out in nature and the outdoors can have so many mental and physical health benefits. And so being able to connect to the outdoors is a step towards our health, right? It's a step toward us being able to enjoy life and embrace happiness, and to promote healing and things like that. So we need access to it. And so when I'm trying to encourage people, especially Black people, to get into the outdoors, I just try to remind them of our history, remind them that, we belong in any space we decide to show up in. And we have just as much right to enjoy the outdoors as anybody. We belong there. And the more of us that we see out there, the more we are going to be encouraged and encouraging other folks to get outside too. Like,
Yes.
I didn't grow up with a role model, but now I get to be a role model for
Yep.
other people, for people to say, oh, I didn't realize that Black women went horseback riding.
Mhm.
I didn't realize that I didn't realize we could go scuba diving. Yeah, we can do anything. Anything that you enjoy, anything you want to try, anything that you're curious about, anything you think might be fun. Yeah, then let's figure out how we can learn how to do those things. And I am a hike leader for a group called Girls Trekkin here in LA. And that's our purpose, is to create a safe space for Black women to come and to be in a safe space with each other, and to go into the outdoors and to go hiking and go camping and try these activities that haven't traditionally been seen as something that quote unquote Black people do, but taking up that space and owning it anyways, and realizing how much fun it can be, especially when you're around other Black women who are helping you to learn and being those role models for you and introducing you to new things that you might not have tried before. So that's a huge part of it, is just being that representation. And then the safety aspect, what I teach is I'm teaching a lot of skills that can be used to de-escalate situations. So say you do run into somebody who has bad intentions, how can we de-escalate? How can we recognize situations before they become something that's violent? What can I do to keep myself safe without having to use my physical skills? But then knowing that we have those physical skills too, that we have the ability, if necessary, to physically protect ourselves. And that by knowing that you have that ability, there has been a lot of research shown that if people learn self-defense skills, they are less likely to use the physical skills because of the confidence in how they carry themselves and how they move through the world. And so I teach those skills because I want people to not feel afraid to go outside, or to know that if they do go outside and they run into an issue, there's no shame in turning around and going another day, right? Like,
Right.
knowing self-defense isn't like, well, I know self-defense, so I'm just going to pick every fight. Like, no, I'm not
Right.
saying that.
Exactly.
I'm saying trust your intuition. I've been on a hike before where I do a lot of solo hiking.
Mhm.
And I was solo hiking here in LA, and it wasn't even really far out. Like, I was just in the neighborhoods, and it was sunset evening, and I got to the point where I was going to continue on this ridge, and just something told me to turn around.
Mhm.
And I said to myself, Nicole, you're just being ridiculous. Like, come on, you've hiked this trail before. You can actually see with your eyes down the trail. Like, everything looks fine. Just go. And then I realized that what I was doing was talking myself out of my intuition. What did I do? I turned around and went home.
Okay.
I went home. I don't know what triggered my intuition, but I'm alive right now.
Right.
So I'm assuming whatever I did was the right move because I'm here. And then a few days later, I went back to the trail. I didn't get that icky feeling, and I finished the trail.
Mhm.
And that's where the empowerment through self-defense comes in, is because if we can alleviate the fear, then we can open up people's access to do these things. Then we can remove that barrier that is keeping people from getting into the outdoors. And by feeling like we can trust our intuition, then it becomes less of a, well, don't go solo hiking, which is not empowering. And I would never teach that. But there's a lot of people who say, oh, well, just don't go solo hiking. That's
Right.
very restrictive, right?
Right.
That's putting a restriction on my life, what I choose to do and what I can do. That's a much different message than what I'm saying, which is, hey, you know what? If you want to go solo hiking, I'm going to give you some tips, and not tips, but strategies and techniques and ways to think about your safety, to where if you run into an issue, you know how to handle it.
Exactly.
Because you might not run into something for 20 hikes, and then on the 21st hike, you might have to deal with something.
Right.
So should I just not go on all those 20 successful hikes because something might happen? Like, we have no control really over when we might be faced with violence. And another thing that I like to emphasize is just emphasizing the statistics that, especially for women, 86% of the time women are assaulted by people we know. And so that fear of, well, if we go into the outdoor solo, that we're going to run into a stranger that means us harm, that's not the statistically most likely thing for us to encounter. So we can help alleviate that fear and manage it more by understanding the facts and then giving us the skills to where, okay, even if I run into that worst case scenario, or if I'm dealing with someone I'm hiking with and they're making me feel really uncomfortable, I'm going to give them the tools to be able to deal with either of those situations in a way that works for them. And that's where the empowerment comes in.
Okay. That good advice. You know, right there I can say, okay, over with. And throw hands out.
Yeah.
but I mean, but that is good advice and it's very encouraging. So let's kind of take that step forward. So let's say you have someone who's interested in hiking. What advice do you give them to get started? Because, you know, hiking is a lot different than, you know, saying, hey, you want to start running? Just get you some tennis shoes and go out and just run down your neighborhood. So hiking is a totally different thing. So what advice would you give someone who, you know, wanted to kind of start taking up hiking?
Well, Eric, I would say that hiking can be just as simple as what you just described for running. Throw on a pair of athletic shoes that are closed-toed with enough grip for whatever trail or walkway that you plan on going, and just hike. Like, hiking doesn't have to be, you don't need, thousands of dollars of name brand gear to
Right.
start hiking. When I started hiking, I wore just tennis shoes, and I brought a water bottle, not even a reusable one, just a plain old 16-ounce plastic water bottle, and shorts and a tank top. And I don't even think I had a fanny pack at the time. Maybe I did. I think I put my phone in like one of those armbands that go around your arm.
Right.
And I just would that was how I would hike. And I didn't get my first pair of hiking boots until I was going on a solo trip to New Zealand. And I was doing this trail called the Tongariro Alpine Crossing, which was a 12-mile trail in between two volcanoes, active volcanoes. So that's where I got my volcano story from. I do a lot of hiking with volcanoes.
Okay.
And I was reading up on everything you needed, and there was a lot of gear that I needed for that trail because that trail was more technical. Hiking the alpine environment, it was going to be cold, it was going to be windy, wet, like all these things that I wasn't used to hiking in. And that was the point in which I started adding on to my gear list. So you don't need to add things on until you start tackling trails that need you to have more gear.
Right.
So that's how I got my first pair of hiking boots. But it can really be as accessible as just make sure you have water, make sure you have sturdy shoes, make sure that you have the clothing for whatever environment you're going to be hiking in, and have, your phone, let someone know where you're going, whether you're hiking solo with a group, just text someone, hey, I'm going to be on XYZ trail today, just so that somebody knows where you are at some point. And then hike. It can really be that simple. And you don't have to go, hours away into the mountains. Like, you can hike in your neighborhood. You can hike to a park. When COVID hit, they shut down all of the hiking trails in LA because they didn't want people to be, congregating in groups. And since everything else was closed, people were just massing into the trails. And so there were thousands of people on the trail that normally weren't there because there's nothing else to do. So the city shut down the trails. I just started walking in the neighborhoods. I found a waterfall in like the hills in this neighborhood. I started looking at flowers and plants in my neighbors' yards that I would never notice before. So you can just to be outside, walking in your neighborhood can be a hike.
Yes. And, and one thing I do tell people whenever I'm asked about hiking and trail running, I'm like, go somewhere that that is safe in regards to that there's an actual trail versus, oh, there's a good spot of woods, I'm just going to go run through these spots. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I was like, there are national parks and there are places where there are just open trails, so gotta stick with those areas.
Yeah, know where you're going, know the trail, have a map or have the map on your phone if you're, going somewhere that you're not familiar with. I would suggest that if you are going somewhere unfamiliar, maybe not do that like late where you might lose the light. Like, if you're going to explore like I do a lot of exploring new places on my own. So I just make sure I'm going to have enough time. I look at the trail ahead of time to make sure I'm going to have enough time so that I'm not going to get lost. And, and go venture out and have some fun.
Oh, yes. And again, I love trail running. I wish I could do it more often, but, I work, I have a day job,
Pesky work getting in the way of the trail running.
Yeah, exactly. Who would have thought? Yeah. um, and the next question I always get asked a lot about trail running is, what about the critters that are out there? And I generally tell people, I was like, the most, and again, let me knock on wood again. I was like, the most I generally see are squirrels, chipmunks, and deer. Every blue moon, I may see a snake. But for the most part, I was like, yeah, they're just as scared of me as I am of it.
Yes. Yes, that's true. I love snakes, by the way. When we have snake season in Southern California, is I would say about like May, June, when it starts to get warmer, and
Yeah.
you'll see like rattlesnakes out on the trail, but they don't want anything to do with you. They're just trying to get some sun. We're in their neighborhood, right?
Exactly.
Like we just have to share. So what I tell people when it comes to critters is, first of all, like what you said, they don't want anything to do with you, right?
Right.
Even bears, we are
Right.
not their natural prey. They are not hunting us to eat us, right? They have much easier prey that they can get. Same with mountain lions, right?
Right.
It's very rare that there are mountain lion attacks on humans, and oftentimes it's a territorial thing. And if it's not, if it's a prey thing, again, it's very, very, very rare. So a lot of the things that I teach for safety can be applied to animals. And the National Park Service and other organizations that talk about animals and trail safety agree that one of the best ways to prevent one of those encounters is to not like to avoid them altogether. So they advise like sticking to the trail. If you're hiking in bear country, make sure you're making noise as you go. If you're solo hiking, like I like to hum, I like to sing out loud. I don't have a bear bell, but I know a lot of people have a bear bell, just because you want to be identified as a human. If they know you're a human, they're going to want to avoid you. And so when I'm hiking in rattlesnake areas in California, I clap as I go through the brush, because sometimes they might not know, they might not necessarily pick up on the vibrations of your steps. So I just want to make it very loud and clear that, hey, I'm here, I'm human, and I'm just passing through. And I will tell you, Eric, I've had an encounter with every major predator that lives in California. I have seen bears, bobcats, mountain lions, rattlesnakes. And I have lived to tell the tale, right, of all of them.
Well, obviously.
So it is possible to have an encounter, and if you know how to respond, if you accidentally run into one of those animals, how you respond can be it's going to be really important to making sure that you can get away safely. And that's not a guarantee, because nothing's a guarantee, but it's like most encounters are chance, like on accident. You didn't plan on it. They didn't plan on seeing you. It's you come around a corner and all of a sudden there it is. You're like, oh, okay. Or I'm on my backpacking trip last year to Whitney, and we're day 3 in the backcountry, and we're walking down some of the most beautiful scenery I've ever seen. And a bear just is wandering through the woods. Like we just see it through the trees, just wandering, walking up the hill. And we're like, okay. And we were really far away, and we saw it, but we just stayed where we were, and we just called out like, hey bear, hey, we're human, we're here, just letting it know that we're human and we're there. And it just walked right by. Right. So I think it is prudent to be prepared and to know what your options are and to know what to do if you encounter an animal. But the fear of encountering an animal, I don't think that should stop people from getting outside, because it's rare. And even if you do, there are things you can do to avoid running into one. And then there are things you can do if you do run into one that can, potentially get you away safely.
Right. And avoid trying to take a selfie with a wild animal.
Oh, please don't. Yeah, no. just leave the phone where it is, and deal with the situation. Tell you, when I saw the mountain lion, I always was like, I want to see a mountain lion in real life. I don't anymore. I'm good with the one that I saw. And what happened was I was on a solo hike, and I had planned to do an 8-mile loop. I had the trail downloaded on my phone. And I get to the point where I was supposed to loop back around. So I was already like 6 miles in, and I was supposed to go down this hill, and it was 2 miles back to where I started. But I got to this place, and there happens to have been a lot of wildfires that have happened in Southern California. And this was, several months after one of them. But the trail showed that it was a trail. But when I got there, my eyes told me this was not a trail, that this was burnt out. I went down a little bit, and it was like all scrambly, and I was slipping, and I said, this isn't safe. and I can't visually see the trail, even though the map says, oh, just keep going. I don't see the trail. If I go down any farther, I'm not going to be able to get back up. And then I'm going to have to call search and rescue. And I don't want that to happen. And so I turned around, and I remember so I turned around and started walking back. So now instead of being an 8-mile round trip, now this is going to be a 13-mile out and back.
Okay.
And that's why I always bring extra food and extra water when I hike, just because you never know, right? Things can happen. And, I always bring a headlamp. It was the evening, it was getting night, so I needed my headlamp. But I'm walking back after realizing I couldn't go this way. And I'm, not even a half mile into the backtrack. And I see a mountain lion walking right in the middle of the trail. And it was like a wide fire trail. But I looked and I was like, is that a coyote? Oh, no, that's a really long tail. Oh, that's a mountain lion. So I stopped. And it was far. I would say like 75 feet away from me. But it was like right in the middle of the open trail, so I could see it clearly. And I stopped and I was like, oh, man, Is this going to be the end of my superhero story? Hopefully not. And it just looked at me, and then it just kept walking up the hill.
Right.
And my heart was just pounding. And I waited about 10 to 15 minutes before I walked, because I couldn't turn around because there's nowhere to go. I had to go back the way I came, right? So there was no way for me to go but forward and past where I had walked by. So I just walked. I made as wide of an arc as I could and was like looking up into the hills, like to make sure it wasn't going to pounce on me. And I passed it. And I remember looking up, and there was a guy eating a sandwich like at the top of the hill. And I was like, hey man, there's a mountain lion. Just keep your eyes open. And he goes, what? and then I walked back, and I got home safe. But yeah, that was definitely a scary encounter. But I lived to tell about it because I knew how to respond.
Well, the general rule is, if there's distance between you and the wild animal, as long as you don't approach it and it's not walking towards you, you're good. You just go in the opposite direction. Don't run.
And don't turn your back.
Yep. Just back away.
Yep.
Let it go. It's kind of like, you stay on your side, I stay on my side. And we cool.
Exactly. Yep.
All right. So you've been involved in a lot of sports, a lot of adventures through your lifetime. You've been, as you mentioned, you were a runner. You've done NPC figure competitions. You've done ice skating, horseback riding. So if you had to pick something that was the most enjoyable that you've done, what would it be?
I have to say horseback riding. Not even a question. I love riding horses. I was that little girl who was kept begging for a pony every birthday and holiday and Christmas. Never got one, still don't have one. But my end goal is to own a ranch in New Zealand, a horse ranch, and have some horses, because I just love horses. They're such amazing creatures. And I didn't get to ride until I became an adult. Okay. And so when I was in, I think, elementary school, there was a neighbor up the street that had a horse, and I took lessons like a few times, but nothing like, over the long term. So when I moved to college, I would go trail riding in Griffith Park. And then when I graduated college, and I forget which job I was working at, but I remember there was a Groupon for a English riding lesson. And I'd always wanted to learn how to jump, like how to jump from the back of a horse. And it was just one of the things that I've always wanted to try, like a bucket list item. So I got the Groupon, and I went to the place, and I said, okay, so, I've only ridden like trail a couple times. I've never ridden English, and I want to jump. And they're like, okay, well, let's start with square one. So square one was learning how to ride with an English saddle, how, proper technique, body position, all the things I didn't know. And I just fell in love with it. So I took lessons once a week for 4 years, I think. And 8 months into my lessons, I was able to jump my very first baby fence, called a cross rail. And then I did some schooling shows, which are basically competitions within the barn. So it's not like any national organization or anything like that. It's just like a local event. And so I did some competitions with that and loved it. It's just, there's so much about horseback riding that a lot of people who've never ridden, or maybe have only ridden like once or twice, they don't realize how athletic it is, like how much of a leg workout and a core workout and a back workout it is to sit, and like mental. Like, you are this very small human sitting on top of this very large animal, that doesn't speak your language, but you have to learn how to communicate in a way that you both understand, and you have to both respect each other, because that horse could very easily hurt you.
Yes.
And so that there's that respect and understanding that happens. And I just think that's such a synergy. It's so wonderful. And so I loved it. I loved writing, and I can't wait to get, back into it more.
Okay. A little secret, many people who know me and grew up around me know, my dad raised horses. So
Oh my gosh, how cool.
everything that you're saying, I'm like, I'm sitting here nodding my head like, yep. And really, once you gotta make that connection with a horse, I mean, it's there. And I'll always remember the first time I introduced my daughter to a horse when she was a baby. The horse, pretty much just licked her. I mean, he just took his tongue and just all up the side of her. My wife was like, "What? She's licking the jersey," and she was freaking out because the horse just went. And my daughter's just giggling and laughing about it.
Oh,
but
that's so wonderful.
It's that connection and stuff. So yeah, horseback riding is like you said, it is a workout, and it is a lot of trust.
Yes.
Like you were saying that the horse has to trust you, and you have to trust the horse. So yes. It is a good trust building thing to do.
Yes.
All right, so. One question I always ask people is that, being, when I started running, when I started, kind of taking my fitness journey seriously, for my health, as well as just to be active and, do something different. I was in my 40s. And a lot of times when you try to sell that and kind of share that with other people, you kind of get that response of, well, it's too late for me to start this. So what would be your advice to someone who says it's too late for me to start because I'm older or I have so much stuff going on in my life?
I would say it's never too late to start. It really isn't. If you want to do something, don't let anybody else's perceptions or anyone else's stereotypes about what they think you should or shouldn't do affect what you decide to do. Like I started ice skating as an adult. Most people start ice skating when they're 4 or 5, they're competing when they're 16, okay. 17. Oh yeah. Like when I was taking ice skating lessons, their littles are out there and they're like out skating me. I started as an adult, and people, oh, it's too late. It's too late for what? Is it too late for the Olympics? Yeah. I'm not trying to be an Olympic ice skater. I just remembered watching ice skating as a kid, and there was a mall near where we live, an hour away, that had an ice skating rink. And I remember the few times that I went there and ice skated, how much fun it was. But I always wanted to, like, how do I jump? How do I spin? How do I look like I'm not about to fall when I'm ice skating? And so I started as an adult. I was in my mid-20s when I started ice skating, and I loved it. And, you get to decide what your goals are. Nobody else does. Like, you get to decide what your limits are. Nobody else does. You get to decide what your risk profile is. Like, I ride motorcycles. And when I got my first motorcycle, I remember everyone saying, oh, it's a donor cycle. That's what they call it in the ER. And, it's so unsafe and blah, blah. Like, I understand all of those things. All of those things are true. Motorcycle riding can be dangerous, but I also enjoyed it. So I took on that risk, understanding what the risk is, and did what I could to mitigate it. I took a motorcycle safety course. And if you know, I was going somewhere like 2 minutes away, I dressed in my full gear. My instructor always said, you dress for the crash, not for the ride. So that's something that stuck with me. But I had a friend who took the class with me, and he'd go out riding in shorts and tennis shoes, but like, that was the risk he was willing to take. And I would ride, but I'm like, here's how I feel safe riding, and this is what I'm going to do. So you get to decide. Like, we can never avoid all risk in our life. We can only decide what risk we decide we want to take based on what we want to do, and how much fun or how beneficial, that's not the right word that I'm looking for. It's going to come to me in a second, but how much you want to do that particular activity. So I would say, no, it's never too late. I don't care if you're, 50, 60, it's never too late to start something new. And as long as you keep your expectations in check, which doesn't mean to say we have to limit ourselves, but like understanding if you start, your marathon journey at 70, okay, you might not go to the Olympics. But I mean, you're not going to say never,
Right.
but if you go in there just saying like, I'm doing this because I love it. And each time I run, I'm going to find something new that I'm going to say as my PR. It doesn't have to be for time, but maybe I took a different route, or maybe I felt less winded after this long of a time, or you find something to enjoy about each part of it. And that's the part that we should be focusing on, is like the journey of like the excitement of like learning something new and trying something that we've never tried before.
Okay, that's great advice. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you.
So before I let you go, do you have any last words for the listeners? Do you have anything that's planned, anything that's upcoming with Girls Fight Back?
So let's see. I just started offering public classes for Girls Fight Back, because usually what I do is I do events for organizations, colleges, things like that. But I get a lot of people that have been asking me, I want to take your class. I want to take your class. But I have not yet offered a public class, but I now am. So last month, 2 weekends ago, I held my very first public class in LA and sold out, which was great. And so I'm going to start offering more public classes, both in person in LA, also virtually, for those who don't live in LA that still want to take a public offering class. And then I don't know if I told you about my outdoor defense series, but I started that series in 2019 because for years people have been telling me you should combine your love of hiking in the outdoors and solo travel, all of that, with self-defense. And
Right.
I just didn't think anybody would want it. I was such imposter syndrome, so much like self-deprecating of like, nobody wants to hear about that. Like, I just felt like it would fail and nobody would watch. So I never did anything. And then at the end of 2019, I had a friend that just kind of gave me that last little motivational push and was like, no, you should just do something. Just take your phone out to, the mountains and just record something. And I was like, okay, that's what I did. And that was my first episode of Outdoor Defense. And I teach simple and practical safety strategies for outdoors adventurers, solo hikers, and beyond. The strategies are not just exclusive to the outdoors. They can be used anywhere. The episodes are all really short. Most of them are 3 minutes or less. And I filmed them when I'm outside outdoors doing something. And there's 60 episodes now. So that I told myself, back when I was interning, that one day I was going to put myself into my own show, like produce my own show. And here I am, self-produced. I produce my own show, Outdoor Defense. I learned how to edit. I direct film. I film most of them. Sometimes I have a friend that will come out and help me with the camera if I don't have my tripod or if I'm solo.
Right.
But I do all my own producing, my own editing, everything I do on my own, and I host it. And it's just such a great joy. Like, it's very rewarding. It's extremely rewarding to be able to put out something that got such a huge response. Like, people really love it. And that is what inspired me to create one of my programs called Yes, I'm Hiking Solo. So I teach that program a lot to outdoor groups and retreats and conferences. And it talks about self-defense specifically for the outdoors, as well as some solo hiking, strategies and tips.
Awesome. Nicole, thank you for coming on the show. I'm bowing down now.
No, please don't.
You can't say I'm bowing down to you now. Thank you.
Thank you for having me as a guest. This was so much fun.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to get in contact with you, just to kind of, just connect with you, find out more information about Girls Fight Back, how can they do so?
So they can find me on my website. That is NicoleSnell.com. So my first and last name, NicoleSnell.com. Also girlsfightback.com. I'm also really active on Instagram. So they can find me at Girls Fight Back on Instagram. And then my personal Instagram, where I post a lot of my fun outdoor adventure things, is Adventures of Nick, and it's N-I-K. So Adventures of N-I-K. And I'm on Twitter and TikTok and Facebook as well, under Nicole Snell and under Girls Fight Back. But yeah, all my programs are listed there. I would love to hear from the audience and any listeners out here. If you want me to come and speak to your group, or you have any questions or anything resonated with you, I would love to hear from you.
Awesome. Again, Nicole, thank you for coming to the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the No Gimmicks, Just Sweat podcast. We really appreciate everyone who tunes in each week. If you enjoyed today's show, please support us by subscribing, rating, and reviewing this show wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember to tell your friends about the No Gimmicks, Just Sweat podcast, so we can continue to have awesome conversations with everyday athletes just like you. Until next time, have an amazing week.